We all make bad tweets. Everyone does it on occasion. I do it.
I don't. All my tweets are great.
Yeah.
Flawless, even my Twitter presence.
Perfect tweets.
Perfect tweets.
All right.
Perfect take.
Nobody looked through my history to verify this statement.
Well, you could also, so what I'm about to talk about here could also be interpreted as a perfect tweet. So let's just get to it.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, I believe it was, what was it, Friday? A lot happened that day. There was the passing of a couple of people, and our council member wanted to commemorate them in their own way. Flo, can you show that tweet? It's a screen cap because they deleted it soon after. So what we have here is Sacramento City Council member, District 1 Representative Angelique Ashby, with two pictures side
also
by
senatorial hopeful. Let's not pass.
Right.
Yeah.
Also state senator hopeful.
Right.
Two pictures side by side, one of DMX, the great rapper, and one of Prince Philip,
the Duke of Edinburgh.
And she wrote DMX. Well, as we all know, they both died on the same day. She wrote DMX and Prince Philip. Wow. Going to be one heck of a party in heaven today. May they both rest in peace. So this tweet lasted, I don't know how long it lasted. It did not last long. She
Not
had
long.
to delete it.
I saw
very
it.
close to immediately.
I don't know what I was doing because
you have to see it
because
out
it
in
came
the
up
world.
at 2:30, and I think I had a meeting that ended at 3, and I did a quick scroll afterward, and I saw it, and then it was gone.
In Angelique's defense, she wasn't the only lib with like this and who posted this sentiment onto Twitter.
Yeah, this was a
on this
popular
day.
take that day.
Yeah, it was.
I want to know, DMX is a well-known fella. He's got many a photograph available on the interwebs. Why is this the one she chose to use? It's like,
What's interesting about this photo?
pixelated.
I don't know. This doesn't speak to the
Right, what are we looking at
resolution
here?
of the photo.
By the way, folks.
This photo. So this is a photo of DMX. He's in red overalls. This is actually his performance at Woodstock '99.
That's what I was wondering. The super white crowd, right?
So yeah. So what he's doing in this photo is getting the almost entirely white crowd to shout the N-word parts of the choruses of his songs. You can go on YouTube and find the footage of him doing call and responses, which
they were all like,
which
yep,
in 2021, this seems like unfathomable. Really, 1999 was apparently an extremely different time. Yeah, if you want, go on YouTube. I can't remember what the song is called, but look up DMX Woodstock '99. Look for this. Look for him in these red overalls, and be amazed at how far we've come in just 22 short years.
Can we DMX? Sorry if I'm changing the subject, but great American iconic rapper, and Prince Philip. His sister married a Nazi.
Right.
It sounds like you're suggesting they're probably not partying together in heaven.
Probably. That's my guess. I saw a tweet saying like it showed like Lil Nas X coming back from partying with his boyfriend Satan. And then it had that picture of the one character like looking in their car at somebody like surprised. And then the other one was like another person looking out of their car surprised. And it was Prince Philip on his way to hell.
Yeah, I found it odd that these two were in the same tweet. Why? Like, these aren't two people who are well connected. There's no reason, like, it's not like I don't see the thread that carries this through other than that they both died. But like
They
Prince
died on the same
Philip
day.
is 99 years old, and to my knowledge was never a big, like, was he a hip hop fan? Was he a partier? Like, I'm just really
He
confused
was
about
a
why
partier.
there was.
You might have stopped a little early on The Crown. He was known to party a little.
I mean, he
but
was
he
known
also-
to womanize and cheat on his wife. I don't know about dance and sing and like go to that's what I'm saying. Like
His
he was known to
body
hang
had
out with a bunch of
already
bros.
his body had already started the decomposition process before they invented hip hop.
I
believe
mean,
that's true.
he hung out with bros where women weren't allowed and seemed to womanize. That's what The Crown showed me. But I didn't see him like cutting the rug at the parties, like, hey, like y'all gonna make me lose my mind. But like, I don't see him
No,
as the life
That would have
of the
been a little
party.
anachronistic, I think.
And so it's just surprising to me that aside from the overall like strangeness of this tweet, that there was going to be this epic party is what you think of. Like, I don't think of that when I think of a nonagenarian. I don't think of that when I even think of him as the nonagenarian in question. Like, I just stiff
Maybe
upper
Prince
lip is what I
Philip's
think
still
of as the
fucked.
British monarchy.
No. Like I said, Prince Philip's body died like decades ago. You can see in like the most recent photos of him that this is a man who has been dead. Do you remember that scene? Is it The Hobbit, the one where the guy's like whispering in the king's ear and the king is like slowly like dying and decomposing?
Yeah.
I can confirm.
The Riders of
Yeah.
Rohan. Yeah, that is that scene. Yeah.
So like that had been happening to this has been happening to this guy since, I don't know, the 50s.
Yeah. Well,
in the 50s, he was like in his late 20s or early 30s. So maybe
I mean,
he probably already looked like he was 80.
The entropy took hold really fast.
Yeah.
I don't know if
He didn't. He
anyway,
didn't have much of a chance.
He's dead.
DMX by comparison, 50 years old, looks great.
Looked great.
Like
yeah.
he was in his 20s.
Anyway, Angelique, thank you for the perfect tweet. Let's get started with the show.
Sounds dope.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And you have Skylar.
And Shannon.
And Flo.
Full house today. How we feeling, everyone?
Better now. I actually, before we get started on the show, I think we owe it to our listeners to follow up on the vaccine thing, since the only technically licensed medical professional, quote unquote, on the show, no pun intended, poo-pooed the idea that the second vax shot would make you gassy.
The person with the PhD.
So it's time for
after their
somebody
name.
to eat a slice of humble pie as we all recount our experiences getting the second shot. I will confirm. I got the second shot last Friday. Mega farts.
Mhm.
I also have it on good authority from a friend of mine in Portland who got the shot on the same day. Mega farts.
I'm
Is there anyone
right now,
else that
still.
affiliated with the show or affiliated with anybody who's on the show that may have had a similar experience, Flo?
They might be a private person, so maybe we leave that.
Yeah. That I also happen to be married to a person who claims that this is one of the side effects.
That was the private person I was talking about.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, it's really strange. I don't believe any of you.
That
I don't.
that
I'm an
flies in the
expert of
face
my
of the scientific
experience.
process.
To be determined, I think. Jury's still out.
I'm, if flatulence shows up on the CDC's list of adverse events, I will believe it. But your N of 3, when millions of people have gotten this vaccine, does not impress me.
Well,
The issue is
it's not
that
under adverse events, it's under funny events.
I mean, most people
Also-
would call it an adverse event. Like, most people are not like, you know what I wanted more of? Flatulence.
What were you saying,
here's the
Shannon?
thing. When I'm like, Flo, I'm out here crop dusting my entire house and neighborhood with my farts. Should I be reporting this? And you're
To the
like,
CDC, right?
I didn't
You're-
say anything. I
No,
mean, if you feel like it's an
but
adverse event.
I listened to the show. I listened to it
Okay.
and I heard your tone.
She was very dismissive
And
about the
it
fart
felt a
thing.
little bit
am.
dismissive. It felt a little like there was a little bit of the poo-pooing. And so
Mhm.
I says to myself, I'm just gonna, you
that
know
also
what?
would be an adverse event, by
This
the
is
way.
just my regular old gassiness. But no.
I mean, you want to talk about farting all the time. Skylar doesn't, because Skylar's still, trying to
which is
impress.
why this is
people,
real,
right?
because Skylar.
When
like,
do I
talking
talk about that?
But what I'm saying is,
That's me.
Shannon
I'm the
talks
one
about
that
her
talks
farts
about it.
all the time. So then Skylar is now joining on, but Skylar never talks about his farts. So I don't know if Skylar's normally farty. I don't have a fart
that should be
baseline
an
for him.
indicator, though, that it was like a really big deal when I became farty enough to talk
you
about it on the
normally
show.
just roll your eyes about the fact that we're having these conversations because you don't like toilet humor, which is why the part of the text that you left out and did not read on the air last time was wheelhouse check. You're welcome, Skylar, which was also what Shannon shared, because you tend to have a little more. It's surprising because, Skylar, there's not a lot that is like off limits for you, but you tend to have a little bit of a more highbrow kind of approach to certain
I just take
topics.
these things very seriously, and that's why when I think it's an issue, I think that should be an indicator that it's something to be taken very seriously.
I just think you think generally these conversations are frivolous, and so you don't share with us how farty you normally are. So I don't have a fart baseline for you. So I have nothing to compare it with. Whereas Shannon is talking about her farts all the time. So this feels like a regular Thursday to me. So I just don't, I'm not convinced that anything that I've observed here is out of the ordinary. I feel like you enjoyed, because of your bathtub vaccine, you enjoyed putting on and piling on to Shannon's, oh my gosh, this is a side effect, but I don't see anything out of the ordinary. And I live with Tareen and I did not experience any of his side effects. So I don't know what he's talking about either. So I'm convinced all of you are just making this up for funsies.
You're a fart denier, 100%.
I am.
You
I
are.
absolutely am. And
Yeah.
if that's a QAnon conspiracy, well, damn it.
This is
I
outrageous.
don't care.
Okay. I think I've reached my fart quota for one episode.
Mhm.
An entire segment with the farting.
Okay, we've done this now. We did 2 episodes in a row, people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
these aren't Patreon.
These aren't
We still have
Patreon
to
ones
convince
now.
Yeah.
them that they
Yeah.
should.
But they soon will be after.
Now
they
they'll be
listen
like,
to
oh
this-
wow, what are they
this
talking about? I better go
episode."
back. I better become a patron and find
Yeah,
out.
exactly. I need to hear the first part of this conversation.
What in the scatological universe am I missing here?
It's worth it.
Okay.
Pseudoscience. That's what you're missing out on, people. Pseudoscience.
So
Shut up, Flo.
oh my god.
How are we gonna bring this back around?
I can't even. And I know what the next topic is. And I'm like,
Right.
I can't seg this.
It's rough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Zenning out. Okay. Real episode. We got some real stuff to talk to you about today, folks.
We do. We actually do.
Yeah, actually let's get into the most important part to begin with. Over the weekend, there was another death of an unhoused Sacramentan. A woman was found near the American River Bike Trail. She appeared to have sustained injuries, violence. Shannon, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, I can't tell you a whole lot actually, except that it is confirmed that this woman was found on Saturday afternoon on the bike trail, and she sustained injuries that are consistent with a possible assault, and so a homicide investigation, according to the reporting, has been launched. And today was actually spent for me answering questions here and there to various people, whether or not I knew her. Her identity has not been publicly released as far as I know. So I'm not gonna say it. But I do know that her family has been notified. Um, and what I can say about her is that she's not somebody that I knew. She's not someone that was known to many people that I was talking to throughout the morning. But this is just it's another story of another person who's died outside, right? After, this just keeps happening. In my work since the pandemic started, to present, 48 people. This woman would be the 49th person that we are aware of that have some sort of relationship with the program that I work at, Loaves and Fishes, have died outside. That's in 13 months, right? Yeah. That's a lot of people. And the thing that I just like continue to push is, housing is a determinant of health. If you have access to housing, your health outcomes are more positive, right? And as people experiencing homelessness continue to struggle with living outside, and their safety continues to be compromised at every possible moment. The other part of that is I wonder about these trauma responses that people experiencing homelessness are enduring as more and more people die, and they're just consistently living in like their fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response because they're never able to complete the stress or trauma cycle.
Right.
And that their bodies are just consistently awaiting the next horrible thing to happen.
So
And sorry, go ahead.
for folks who don't know, Shannon is the program director at Mary House, which is the emergency daytime drop-in shelter for women experiencing homelessness. How has this affected your guests?
This morning when I have a morning meeting with the team, and I let them know about what had happened and said that we didn't yet know if this was somebody that we knew on campus. And at various points in the day, I had gone out to talk to people and just asked, did anybody know? Does anybody know anything? Do we know who this person is? And there was one moment when I was talking to these two women who have lived outside for years. And they both said, we don't know who it is. And they started naming people. And the three of us were just looking around at the crowd of people standing out in front of the program, naming all of the women that weren't there that usually are, and thinking it could be any of them. Like it, and it genuinely could have been any of them, right? Like, and so there's there's a sadness and there's a fear, because there are these stories of the violence that women are experiencing out on the street, that they can't ever rest or feel safe. There there's just there's obviously the grief and the mourning that is attached to losing another person, whether or not they knew them. It's like it's like losing a person, it's like a comrade, right? Like it's somebody in the community that you've lost. And we know that this person didn't die comfortably of natural causes.
Right.
So it's sad. And I think learning that this was a person that we didn't know, but who slept outside so close, there was almost an additional heaviness to it, because there's something about the truth that when a woman that our campus community knows dies, like that is always difficult. But the truth is that we knew her and we loved her, and there's a bond, and we know that she knew that we loved her, and that it was there that she was cared for, and it was there that she could come and be seen and heard and valued. And so when I found out who she was and learned that she was somebody that I didn't know, I felt this like really heavy weight of like, I wonder who did know her. And as I started asking people, and they were like, that name isn't familiar, I don't know who that is, it just became heavier and heavier that like we live in the richest place in the world, and people die violent deaths not known by anyone, like walking distance away from places where they could be known, right? Like people are pushed so far out into the margins that this woman wasn't known. I mean, and that's not to say that she wasn't known by somebody, but she wasn't known by anyone that I spoke to today. And there is a heaviness attached to that. So I don't know. More has to be done. It's not what is done. What has been done isn't enough. And I think we can be grateful for the work that has been done by city leadership, and at the same time hold up the truth that it's not enough, and that we've waited and for such a long time for something to happen for people. And the longer that these like conversations go on about how to do things or where to put shelters or whether or not people are shelter resistant and all of this stuff, like more people's lives are at risk. People are dying outside.
That was
Someone
going to be
died on Saturday.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question. Like, okay, like this keeps happening. Obviously, it keeps happening. It's been happening for as long as this has been a problem.
Yep.
What is next? What do we demand, and from whom? And I mean, maybe we'll start sounding like broken records here. So, but like, that's the next question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's continuing to demand shelter and demanding, there are hotels that aren't being utilized. So like making sure that like putting people in hotel and motel rooms and like offering, those safe spaces for people to be inside. Like, and yeah, I think the thing that we hear so often is, but there's people who aren't going to take that. And I think there's a couple of responses to that. It's one, like, people are people and they get to make their own choices. Also, when the body of people who have not done enough year after year after year suddenly like, here's this thing that we've done for you, it's not like you're going to very quickly trust,
Right.
no. Like, so
yeah.
you need
that
to
distrust
have
is very, very earned.
100%. So it has to be like, you have to activate like a person-centered approach and a rapport building approach to serving people experiencing homelessness. And people will say things like, but the Meadowview shelter, and but like the city sanctioned safe ground. And it's like, yeah, but those are still like city sanctioned safe ground is still sleeping outside, and it's safe, and I'm not like
It's still a
I think it's
portion, like a
it's a
sliver.
portion of, there needs to be a robust shelter system that includes safe ground and indoor shelter and hotel rooms and congregate shelter at some point, and you know apartments and affordable housing for people. Like, we
Yep.
need to be
Yep.
working on a robust system that is like in steps, right, that gets someone to that permanent supported housing space. And so I think it really is a broken record call to action. It's all of the stuff that we have always said, and it has unfortunately, something as tragic as what happened on Saturday to this woman out on the bike trail lights up another fire under us to keep shouting, right, and to like give those reminders to our local government that like
In any way we prefer to, right? I mean, everybody has their own sort of way to do their direct action or their sort of influencing, and don't think we should try and stop people from using their own means.
No, I mean, however you see fit, like accountability gets to be creative, and like we need to hold people accountable to offering better options. Otherwise we just have this group of 5,000 plus people who are living in this like enormous stress and trauma bubble with no
Right.
end in sight. Like,
yep.
And what do we expect? Like, what do we expect? Like, when someone comes and says, like, do you want to come inside? Or if it's like, why is this encampment so dirty? And why are you smoking and drinking all the time? And it's like, well, because my executive function is impacted by my trauma response that is always on, because
Right.
I am never safe. So getting through day-to-day tasks is exponentially more difficult for a person who lives in their trauma response. I mean, I'm not like a brain doctor, but I understand how that works as a result of the work that I have found myself doing over the last 15 years. You can't expect people to operate at the same level as like a typically functioning housed person, right?
I'd like to step in and say that I think like in a society that's healthy, in a society where we care about each other, the news that an unhoused woman has been assaulted and has died out by herself on the bike trail is a bigger story and a far larger tragedy than whatever happens to Daryl Steinberg's landscaping or whatever happens outside Howard Chan's house. I know it won't be. Those events, the Sacramento Bee covered it, like they're going to talk about it, but it's not going to be, Gilduran's not going to write editorials about how screwed up everything is, that like this is how it's going on. You know, it will largely be because this looks to be a homicide. There will be, like, my prediction is there will be little to no sympathy for anybody, because it will be viewed as unhoused people fighting and killing unhoused people down by the river. And we don't worry about that, except when we're trying to go for bike rides and we're annoyed by all the tents. Right. But I think it's worth stating, that no matter what, like what led to this woman's death, it does not change the foundational point that if there weren't a bunch of people living in like survival conditions and like Shannon says, like a prolonged and permanent state of trauma down under that bridge, that woman would still be alive. So it doesn't change, like the way that she died changes absolutely nothing about the central point of the entire thing, which is if we if we would bring our neighbors indoors and into shelters, that woman's alive, whether it's weather conditions or no.
I am, as we were having this conversation, Shannon, and as you were talking about, you know, what it means to have somebody who is known but not known, right? I think about how, there are always these levels to how much concern we have for people and how much compassion as a society we extend. And so, Skylar, as you were talking, what immediately came to mind is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite villains. And I think it's really interesting because over time I've kind of gotten to the place where sometimes villain question mark, protagonist question mark. And I'm going to paraphrase this because I know how the
hope
internet
this
works.
is Steppenwolf. I'm really dying for this to be Steppenwolf.
It's not, but I'm going to paraphrase this because I know how the internet works, and I don't want this to be like taken out of context as a direct threat. But in The Dark Knight, the Joker has a quote where he says something to the effect of like, nobody panics when things go according to plan, even if the plan is horrifying. If tomorrow, I tell the press that like somebody experiencing homelessness is going to die, or that, somebody is going to get shot by the police, nobody panics because it's all part of the plan. But if you say that one little old mayor will have his landscaping trampled, then everybody loses their mind, right? Or one little city manager is going to have a protest, everybody loses their minds. And I
Flo
think
has been Joker-fied, folks. It has happened to Flo.
Her using the quote like that, it's so good.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to, right? Is that like we're totally fine with the people who we as a society view as expendable experiencing the fate that we all anticipate for them and are actually even completely unbothered by them experiencing. But the moment that somebody who's in a position of privilege, the moment that somebody whose name we know and who maybe even we see as being more like us experiences any sort of minor hardship, now all of a sudden everybody loses their minds. And so I go back to the charge I think that we have all said, which is, Gil Duran, are you going to ask every single city council member and the mayor to name and claim every single person who dies who's experienced homelessness over time? Because if you're not, I really want to know why you harangued everyone on council to make a comment about the mayor's landscaping, because that seems to
Everyone
me to
who
be
wasn't
the
a needle
clearest,
live on council.
right? I mean, that seems to be the clearest indication of where your values lie, is where you spend, and someone said this to me when I was growing, like, I can tell you what you value based on how you spend your time and your money. So you spent your time on this, Gil, and in some ways you expended your political capital, which is as close to money as money gets. So that's obviously where your values lie. And I'm really just curious why, when people who have far less privilege are harmed, you don't seem to show up, but you claim that we're supposed to all believe that you care about these issues very deeply.
Right. You just said in a very more fun way what I wanted to drive home to. And so just to try and pull that all together, I think you're totally obviously correct on the media's culpability, the old guard, Gil Duran's, opinion editors' culpability. I also want to drive it home too that the violence against this woman is directly tied to the purse strings of our county. And so our entire board of supervisors, this is their violence. And, they can scoff at the LA Times when we say that, but that's true. And this is the county CEO's violence when he takes $100 million of what should have been COVID money and gives it to our sheriff's department, who is just going to put more violence against our lower classes and our people of color and our unhoused populations. This is all directly related. And like people are starting to make that connection these days. It's also related on our city level, right? Daryl, everyone on city council who's been there longer than 3-4 months. We're going to have to stop dropping that asterisk sooner or later, but let's keep it for now. And then also the bureaucrats there, Howard Chan. Howard Chan makes decisions whether people live or die, and he has made decisions that have resulted in people's deaths in the street. And there's no other way to look at it. It's a direct line.
Yeah.
And sorry if I couldn't say that as like fun as Flo did.
No, I mean, I think we have to say it in as many different ways as we possibly can so that at some point it hits right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit?
Before we leave this real quick, actually, I just wanted to say one thing. I guess two things. One, Shannon, I know that this is a time of like emotional pain for you and the folks you work with at Mary House, and as it is every time something like this happens. And I don't know if you guys are in the practice of doing this, but if you aren't, I think that you guys should take a moment, like all of you who work at Mary House, and reflect on how many women are not dead out on the bike trail because you go to work every day. All of you, I think, share a tremendous, you all, from what I can see, do your jobs, and part of it is it comes with a fair amount of emotional and psychological scarring that comes from some of the things that you see. And I think that it's important for all of you who do the work that you do to like take a moment and appreciate yourselves for this not happening more often than it does, because I think that you guys are directly responsible for saving a lot of these lives. So I hope that you guys do that. Another thing, Flo, I had a question for you. Why so serious?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course,
So much.
of course. Yeah.
So much.
Moving
Hey,
on.
if you would.
It was also a really good, like the voice was, I mean, that was.
Oh, he always nails it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
all of the
boy.
villains, you nail them.
There's a few things I want to hit in the second half here, so I maybe want to run past the national level a little bit, but there was supposed to be over the weekend on Sunday a national White Lives Matter rally where all these white nationalists were supposed to come together in all these different cities and, show their might or whatever. And this was a spectacular failure for a number of reasons. But literally in city to city, I mean, there were 1 to 3 people tops at these little demonstrations. A lot of that has to do actually with the anti-fascists, the anti-racists infiltrating the chats of these white nationalists in ways that honestly our cops have never been able to do, honestly, because like, how can you be on the same chat twice, right? And so these folks, these anti-racists, these anti-fascists are doing spectacular work, really shattering the white nationalist movement.
I would like to take a moment to say that I think with a lot of these things, like when the Proud Boys were doing their thing where they were down at the Capitol every Saturday, there's a lot of sentiment from the lib brunch crowd. It's like, everybody should just stay home and just let them burn themselves out and they'll go away on their own. And all the anti-fascists are doing is like exacerbating the problem and prolonging the situation. Like, I want us to take a look at what happened Sunday, or what, more importantly, what didn't happen on Sunday with the White Lives Matter movement. All of the brunch libs should be on their knees thanking the anti-fascists for being actually willing to get in the street and do something, because like Dave said, the fact that this was such an embarrassing disaster for the alt-right is 100% due to the work of anti-fascists who are volunteering their time and risking their safety to deal with this problem that not only are brunch eating libs not willing to do anything about, but neither is law enforcement.
Yeah.
So I think all of us need to take a moment of appreciation for the members of our community who are willing to spend their time and are willing to risk their safety to stand up for what is right and keep these people out of the streets.
Absolutely. And I think I should probably flesh out that little joke I had earlier. These cops and these far right folks, there is a uncomfortable Venn diagram here that people are increasingly becoming aware of. Actually, a local demonstrator here in Sacramento, a local activist, identified a far-right Proud Boy who is in Fresno PD. And because this person identified them, no cops identified them, this person identified them, that person lost their job. Cops aren't doing the work here. No, the libs aren't doing the work here. The anti-fascists are doing the work, and they're finding these people, sniffing them out, and removing them from these positions.
Right.
So let's bring it local Sunday. They apparently like 3 or 4, well, I don't know how many of these far right white nationalists show up in McKinley Park in Sacramento to have their little demonstration, their little White Lives Matter demonstration. And some anti-fascists show up, right? Anti-racist, anti-fascists show up. And we don't know much about what happened, but here's what we do know, that the cops let every single one of their White Lives Matter folks go. They went home. They slept in their beds that night. They arrested 3 anti-racists, 3 people of color, gave them trumped up charges, and those 3 people are facing bail of collectively $250,000, 250,000. So 100,000, 100,000, 50,000. It is absurd. It is it's Chief Hahn treating these good people who are working for you, for all of us, treating them as terrorists. That's exactly what happened here.
Can we, before we get too far away, something you just said there bears repeating, because Chief Hahn also recently made an insinuation that all of the anti-fascist left-wing protesters are white guys, in an attempt to weaponize the identity, like the fact that Howard Chan is an Asian man and that he himself is POC. These 3 that they arrested, not a white guy to be found, all POC. So that.
Right. And then, like, you also see leadership in a lot of these Black Bloc demonstrations. I've almost only seen Black leadership there. So I don't know what the fuck Chief Hahn thinks he's talking about. And if his intelligence is really telling him that it's white folks, you're really bad at your job. Like, you are extremely bad at your job.
It reminds me of how, the common refrain, when the protests happened at Darrell Steinberg's house was, well, none of the people out there were experiencing homelessness. And I was like, how do you know that? We have almost 100,000 people in this region who lost jobs and were on the verge of homelessness because of COVID-19. Like, you don't know who might be couch surfing at this point. You don't know what does it mean to look like a person experiencing homelessness? Like, I was so shocked by the immediate dismissal of, like, none of the people here could be personally affected. And I was like, A, you don't know that. And B, I would hope that it wouldn't require you to personally experience racism to be outraged by it. I would hope that it wouldn't require you to personally experience homelessness to be outraged by it. Like, that's an absurd way of going about
these
deciding.
People literally have never even heard of the concept of solidarity. Completely foreign concept.
But it's also, to me, like, this idea of, how do you know who is and who isn't. Like, you're able to look at people and see the fact that they're housed.
There's also the point that Chief Hahn knows that this LA Times reporter is going to be a lazy stenographer, because these old white guys are just, it's the same narrative that they want to hear, right? And so this old white guy who wrote this piece, you know, is just like, oh yeah, all the protesters are right. I'll just write what Chief Hahn said, right? And again,
Police are stakeholders.
This is
You
to
always say it.
Police are stakeholders. And also, I mean, old guard capitalists, journalists and editors are stakeholders too, kind of, at the end of the day, when you look at it, right? I mean, why do you think the Gil Durans are trying to protect our elected officials when they should be holding them accountable? Why do you
Some
think
elected officials,
Jim Rainey's are, you know, are out there just like caping for our violent elected officials who brought out the National Guard, who had our police shoot boys through the mouth and almost killed a demonstrator like with a canister to the head? Like, it's so backwards to us, but like when someone can come and just parachute in and just claim like Daryl's doing his work, right? Maybe I'm bringing us a little forward. I just wanted to say real quick, the charges brought against a couple of the folks: a felony attempted robbery. These are the folks that went up against the white nationalists. Again, the white nationalists who walked home, but they charged the folks who went to tell them that they're not welcome here. The Sac PD charged them with a felony attempted robbery. What they were attempting to steal, I'm very interested to hear, according to the cops. Felony conspiracy. So like conspiring to do a crime.
I think that technically in California, from how it has been explained to me, if you even sort of hint at discussing doing a crime with one other person, you can be charged with felony conspiracy if the cops want to charge you with that.
Yeah. I mean, they can charge you with whatever, whenever too.
Right.
Yeah. And then 2 misdemeanors, battery and destruction, defacement of property to interfere with the exercise of a civil right. I mean, it just, Chief Hahn is just like a vile person trying to stop good people from doing their work. I mean, this is what this strikes me as.
I mean, if the cops were willing to do their jobs, it wouldn't be like anti-fascists wouldn't need to show up and do it.
Yeah.
But the cops are not willing to police right-wing extremists, and so it's left to the community to do it themselves.
Meanwhile, we have anti-AAPI violence actually happening around Sacramento, right? And what is Sac PD doing about that? And so maybe we get into this now. You know, Chief Hahn, we were sort of skirting around this LA Times piece. We were all mentioned in this piece, which we all thought was kind of amusing. Chief Hahn told this LA Times reporter that these folks are terrorists, that the anti-fascists are terrorists. I mean, how do we want to discuss that, or should we discuss?
Well, his quote, it's like something along the lines of he does the Merriam-Webster definition of terrorism is using violence or the threat of violence to achieve a political goal, right? And he's like, and under that, it's hard to say that this isn't domestic terrorism, but it's also to me, the first thing that pops into my mind when I hear him say that is like, you are literally describing what the cops do. Like we just saw the cops spend an entire year brutalizing peaceful protesters to achieve a political end. So like, if we're to take Chief Hahn's definition of this thing on its face, he is the chief of the largest and deadliest terrorist cell in the area.
Yeah,
just strictly going by his definition.
America, right? Like second only to America, because we use the threat of violence all the time around the world. So like, I'm really confused about this super vague definition of terrorism.
Mm-hmm. Can I give context to for the listeners who do not know, the LA Times sent a reporter up to parachute in and do a piece on the house call demonstrations. So demonstrators going to electeds and city officials' homes to demonstrate. And it basically went the exact way that any of you would have guessed it would. It was sort of this filleting of our elected officials, and then a chastising of these young folks who are out there demonstrating. And wow, this property damage is really truly violence. And who are we to accept this? I spent nearly 2 hours talking to this journalist, telling him, giving him the background on the state-sanctioned violence, the violence that happened under Darrell Steinberg, the violence that happened under Howard Chan, under Chief Hahn, and none of it ended up in his piece. So this guy was just going to write what he was going to write.
He did quote me calling for terrorizing elected officials. So that, he got some of the good stuff in there.
Well, you are still protected under the First Amendment. There was no direct call for a particular thing. So you're good.
Good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. If the G-men show up, don't let them in.
Yeah. Fair.
They don't have shit.
I think one of my favorite things about this article, if we can, I think people should read this article because it's hilarious. The picture that they use for the article is a picture because we're talking about the protest that happened at Howard Chan's house. The picture for this article is a picture of Howard Chan peeking out his blinds as if Antifa is out there, in the darkness waiting to strike or whatever. Ironically, this was a photo shoot that they set up at his office at City Hall. He's not at his house. They reenacted a thing where he's scared in his house at his office to do this piece.
It's clearly downtown.
It is hilarious to me. And it just it's perfect for this, right? Because this entire thing is this goofy.
It's staged. Yes.
Yeah, it's this goofy reenactment of it, telling of this thing that's that is completely artificial.
In the industry, we call setting up a shot like that in journalism, in photojournalism, we call that staging, and it is deeply and profoundly looked down upon. So the fact that this is happening in this story, that they have this staged little thing of him peeking out of the window of his office.
I love the idea there's a photographer there and they're like, all right, Mr. Chan, now look scared. Okay, no, pull the blind down a little bit further. Look a little more scared. Can you do your eyes look scared? Can you do a thing with your mouth to look a little? Okay, no, that's perfect. Now hold that. We're shooting that. I love to think about this.
I can't. Yes, exactly. And I can't drive home enough how in the industry that is considered deeply, deeply immoral to set people up like that. So the idea, or there's either the idea that actually happened, or on the other end that it actually was he was just peeking out of his blinds the entire interview. Those are the two options here.
Yeah, that's true.
He's just remembering that night.
Oh, I love it. I mean, the LA Times they really showed us their worth. It reminds me just they might have this storied name or whatever, but this guy came in and just he had nothing, man. I mean, this is no conversation that we haven't had over and over and over again.
Right. I think going back to what we were saying about terrorism, I think it's important to give people a reminder that so far in the Sacramento saga of, we'll say, the protesters being the people and the mayor and the city manager being agents of the state and the cops being the enforcing arm of the state. Mm-hmm. So far, there's a lot of talk from Hahn about how the demonstrators are terrorists or are domestic terrorists or whatever. But so far, the tally has been literally zero acts of violence being perpetrated by the people against the state. There was some landscaping damage and a trash can was overturned. On the flip side of it, there have been, I don't know how many, hundreds, thousands of examples of violence against human bodies being perpetrated by the state against the people. So if we're going to talk about who are the terrorists and who are the people being terrorized, it is like I just feel like you don't have to pull the curtain back that far to see just exactly how completely 100% full of shit Chief Hahn is when he starts throwing around terms like domestic terrorism. The other thing that I think people don't really realize about this is that domestic terrorism is if you get charged on like terrorist charges, it's a bigger deal. So by like putting people under this umbrella, you legally it puts the cops in a situation where they can rope you up a lot harder.
Yep.
For no reason, basically.
Which is what we saw on Sunday.
If they decide that you're terrorists. Yeah,
I mean they know exactly what they're doing, and they want to throw the book at folks, and it's a thing that I guess our strongest memory of this is 9/11 when they threw the word terrorists on everything, to really harm people. But this has been going on long before that too. The U.S. has been using that language, and police forces know how to weaponize that language. But at the end of the day, Skylar, you said it best. Chief Hahn is the biggest terrorist in this city. Right. Darrell Steinberg, terrorist.
Howard Chan. I mean, if we're just talking about people who have used their influence to commit violence against other people for political reasons. Yeah. Yes. There's no other way to look at it.
They are straight up removing people's homes, their tents, for political reasons.
Right.
They are allowing their police force to kill unarmed boys with impunity
for political reasons.
Yes. So Daryl, Daniel, Howard, baby, who's the terrorist here?
Well, Dave, if I were on the hunt for more info on who the real terrorists are, I feel like there's a lot of takes. There's a lot of takes all over the internet. But I need the good takes. In fact, I don't need the good take. I've had the good takes. I ingest a lot of takes. I take in a lot of takes. Good takes are not enough for me anymore. I've gotten to a point where my tolerance for takes is like obscenely high, to the point where I basically have to mainline the pure stuff now just in order to get anywhere near satisfied with the takes. Which does put me in a bind, because there's only so many takes, and of course the quality is all over the place. And so I was hoping that you could direct me to a place where there are pure distilled takes ready for me to ingest in my preferred method, whatever that may be. Can you help me with this?
Yes, I can. I also want to start with, there is going to be a pure distilled meetup of pure distilled people Tuesday evening in Cesar Chavez Plaza.
That's tonight, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah, on the day of publishing. The recommendation I read was to block up. So if you know what that means, then you know what that means. People are meeting up there to demonstrate against the police killing of Dante Wright in Brooklyn Commons, Minnesota. Again, this is like 10 minutes from of where the what's his name, Derek Chauvin trial is taking place. And so I think it's really important that people do show up in whatever way we can, right? So even if you don't go to that, find out your way, find out your message, find your medium to fight back.
But also, if you want to go to it, go to it. Let's this numbers are good for something like this.
Yeah, it's a safety thing for a lot of folks out there, and
bring
you,
your
and you
friends.
see these folks are treating them like terrorists, and I don't think it's just extremely brave. I can't even I don't know what else to say. I do know a place of perfect takes. That place is a little corner of the internet known as voicesrivercity.com. We started as a news and arts media outlet. We do the SAC Follows the Money project there, which we're deeply proud of. The most recent iteration of Voices has been this podcast. And I was just thinking how in September 2019, I relaunched the podcast with a Facebook Live at a cider house. And it has grown to the LA Times writing hit pieces on us today. And I think we all should be very proud of what that's become. And we couldn't do it without the listeners and without the supporters. So thank each and every one of you for the work you've done and the help you've done. Voices River City is a fun place. We want to be more community oriented. We've always been community oriented, but it's been very hard during the COVID era. So keep up with us, because as things open up, we definitely want to have some more stuff wherein we are interacting with the community. For now, we are on Twitter, Voices River City. We are on Instagram at Voices River City, very funny. We're on Facebook, Voices River City. We are on Patreon, patreon.com/voicesrivercity. You get not just your Tuesday episode. If you become a patron for as low as $5 a month, you also get a Friday episode. That is 4 extra episodes a month for just $5 a month. That's like $1 an episode. That is pretty incredible.
It's a steal.
It's a steal. We have a store. I just gave a friend a mug that they bought at our store, voicesrivercity.com/shop. Lots of fun stuff there. You get little koozies. We have t-shirts. We have many things. Stickers.
Vaccines.
And then finally, vaccines.
Vaccines. from the tub.
That one's for Flo.
That threw me off.
I hate it here. If anybody was curious, I hate it here.
And then, I'm planning on doing a with fully vaxxed folks, a teach-in on how to do follow the money projects, both locally and on a state level. So keep up with that. And hopefully we'll be doing many of these in the future. Really, Voices should be about empowering other people and creating a platform that others can use. Keep it in mind also, if you have an op-ed you want to write, a piece you want to write, a Truth to Power piece, reach out to us, because we are open to publishing them, because you certainly don't want to publish it at the B. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, if I wanted to read your perfect takes personally on Twitter, where would I go?
I am on Twitter as Kempa at YOUKNOWKEMPA.
You can find me on Twitter and elsewhere as Guillotine for You. That is Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
I'm Shan N.D. Stevens.
And I am Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
All right, that's the show. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for listening. And until then, we want you to know that we love each and every one of you. And we want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
Keep a safe distance in the meantime.